And welcome to the AV Forums podcast, streaming live on Wednesday, the 19th of May, 2021. And joining me on this edition, although he's not here at the moment, is Tom Davies. Ed, you could do his line.
No luck catching them swans then.
And Ed Selley.
It's all right, Andy. It's just bolognese.
Right then, like we said, Tom's supposed to be here, but he uses a Windows PC and it suddenly decided that it was going to update while he was trying to join the call. So he will join us
once he's finished fighting his own computer.
Yeah, once, and obviously we're down to a threesome tonight, so we've still got plenty to talk about.
Oh yeah.
If you've got questions, then obviously you can use the chat window as you normally do. Ask us any questions you like. It doesn't have to be AV related, although it does help if you ask us about our expertise. But you can ask us whatever you like. You can use the chat window as always. If you're watching live, if you're not watching live, then don't worry about it. You can send us your questions, send them to podcast@avforums.com, and we will read them out next week on the podcast if you do that. Lots of things happening on the news, and also we have the movies podcast moving to its own little section that begins next month, for the first Wednesday in June at 7:30 p.m. We will have the movies podcast with Tom and the movies team, rather than the weekly. The weekly podcast follows the next 3 weeks, so it's a bit of a 3-in-1. You get the movies at the start of the month, and then you get us on the weekly podcast for the rest of the month. So we're splitting up a little bit, rather than having 2 podcasts a week for you to one week for you to listen to. We'll give you a break. You can.
It also gives me a week off, which I'm not altogether upset.
Yeah,
about.
there is the plus side for us that we get a week off.
Yeah,
but we won't be going to hi-fi shows or anything like that, because if you haven't read Ed's articles,
and they're still dropping. They're dropping like flies.
Yeah, so I was going to do it in the news, but obviously IFA has gone from in person to not in person, back to virtual, and it was a bit of a non-event last year, IFA.
Yeah,
and because of that, because it was you see, manufacturers in Europe, they tend to hold something back for IFA, but if IFA's not happening, then they'll push the product out a bit quicker, which is what they did last year, or they'll hold their own event probably before IFA. So yeah, unfortunately IFA has fallen by the wayside. I expect CES will go ahead in some form in person.
Yeah, I think that there's the benefit of a bit more time and a relatively heavily vaccinated domestic population. What I think probably we won't see is necessarily a huge amount of international, a significant number of international travelers.
Yeah, I think what we'll see is probably restrictions on how many can go in person to CES. So we'll wait and see what happens with that one. But yeah, the fact that it's taking place in the States, like you say, bigger vaccination numbers and so on, they might put something together. But I don't think AV Forums will be out this. I don't think it'll be many out.
No.
Seeing the way things are going at the minute. So yeah, that's all happening. So what have you been playing with this week? Oh, there's Tom. Tom's
fashionably late. Can we actually hear you now, Tom? Oh, there we go.
Right, you're going to do your quote, Tom?
Oh, can do. I suppose.
Okay. Excellent. That was worth waiting on. Right, so Ed, what have you been playing with?
Other than myself, obviously, we've got one product I still can't tell you about. It's an exclusive and it's still not been officially announced, but it will be ready to go pretty much for that time. I've been finished writing up the Sennheiser IE900, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on. I just need to take some pretty pictures of it, get it up on the site. There is a brand new all-in-one streamer, all-in-one streaming system from a company called Hi-Fi Rose, newly arrived in the UK. I've got a sample here in and running. There's a photo of it on my Instagram if you care about these things. And it's very, very good. There will be other things before the end of the month, but as I say, it's been a very exclusives heavy month. So I can't tell you about many of the exciting things that I'm playing with other than myself. So, but nevertheless, it's nice and busy. And there's even more cool stuff in the pipeline for the next few months as well. So things are looking pretty solid there. I've been speaking to a couple of different manufacturers, and the good news is not everything I'm looking at has a price tag like a telephone number. There's some new cool stuff turning up at the affordable end. There's also some things turning up at the less affordable end, but I promise you they are going to be interesting things to read about, even if you're not necessarily shopping at that price point. So it's actually, for hi-fi, everything's coming at Millhouse.
Okay, good. I've only had one product delivered this week, which was a JBL synthesis processor. And I sat and had a briefing this morning with JBL about that. So that's now sitting on the pile of Arcam boxes behind me there. I will get it plumbed in probably at the weekend. Because it's...
You don't want to mess your rack up, do you?
Yeah, that's the thing. I've got the rack just the way I like it at the minute. So I'm going to have to maneuver it in such a way that it's just swapping XLRs over. So it's not too difficult. It's just getting them in the right hole, basically. Boom, boom, tish. So yeah, I've got that to do. Got the Hisense TV behind me there. Still in the box, because I've still got the C1, which is also behind me on the rack. I will get that filmed tonight. That's the plan. Get the settings video done and then get all the filming done for that. And then that's coming down tomorrow, the Hisense going up. C1 gets collected on Monday, and I'm getting two 55-inch C1 and G1 so I can do some comparison testing. So Els, you're kind enough to send the two TVs at once, 55-inch, so it won't break my back either, putting them together and test them. Still waiting on the Sony though, which is the TV I really want to see at the minute. For some reason, they're struggling to get a TV to me at the minute, so we are still trying to figure that one out. So that's what I'm doing. Can't think of anything else. Oh, my car arrived in Liverpool.
Oh, it actually docked now, did it?
It's docked. I don't know if it's on the boat or off the boat yet, but I'm
no. But the boat is attached to land.
Yes, it's in Liverpool as we speak. So I'm hoping that next week I should be able to go down to Nottingham and pick it up. Hopefully, if not, it'll be the beginning of June. So getting close now. And hopefully the weather will get better, because I'm kind of glad I don't have the car at the minute, because we've had some horrendous hailstorms and thunder and lightning and all sorts this week. So I'm kind of glad the car wasn't sitting outside in the hail getting damaged. So yeah. Right. So Tom, other than, being lax with your timekeeping, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm awful today for timekeeping. Nothing at all with technical difficulties. Yeah, I've been doing good. I went back to the cinema on Monday. It was great. It was just great. I went to see Godzilla versus Kong. So again, but it was so much fun on the big screen. It was how it was meant to be seen, for sure. And
how busy was it, Tom?
Dead, completely dead. Yeah, but it was the first day that they were open. It was a late showing I went to, which are quiet anyway. So,
yeah.
It's
obviously the plural of anecdote is not data. I don't anticipate your reply being a litmus test for the future of cinema. I was just sort of, interested.
Yeah. But it all seemed good. It all seemed, fairly well managed. You have to pick up your concessions now, like you're at Argos. So, you put your order in and then they call your number when it's ready. And to be honest, in the meantime, you just wait around the foyer. It
doesn't sound actually that bad. So
no, it worked. It worked fine. Yeah, and in the screen itself, everybody. Oh no, okay, not everybody was masked up, but the majority of people who were in there were masked up, and those who weren't were eating and drinking. It seemed fine. But most importantly, I had a huge smile on my face the whole time. It was great.
Well, I'm pleased. I'm pleased with that. I've got my first eat-in restaurant meal on Saturday, which is exciting as well.
So, that is quite exciting. What kind of food are you going for your first?
It's gastropub, and I will have a pint in a pint glass along with it, as opposed to a pint in a plastic beaker, which I've had in a pub garden. So, it's all up from here. That's the plan anyway. So yeah,
a pint and a pie sounds.
I don't know. Ideal. I wouldn't rule a pie out. I mean, normally you'd say by May that's no longer pie weather, but the May that we're having, there's the strength for it.
Perfectly acceptable. Any weather is perfectly acceptable for a pie.
I think that's a regional thing.
Yeah, But you see the weather. This time last year we were going through a bit of a mini heat wave.
We were. Can I just say that I have a very large valve amplifier turning up for another publication next week, which usually guarantees 30 degrees in the shade. So I may yet be able to save the British summer. We'll see how we go.
Okay, we'll see how we get on with that one. Right, so I think we're all caught up. Who wants to do the competitions?
I don't mind. I can do that. I got them right here.
Okay.
If you'd like.
Yep.
So at the moment, you can win a Live Audio Pro Series all-in-one ceiling speaker kit with 59999. You can enter that before June the 4th. So you've only got a couple of weeks to get in on that. We've also got the usual bunch of 4K and Blu-ray competitions. At the moment, we've got 3 Studio Canal Vintage Classics on Blu-ray, a copy of Last Action Hero on 4K. That's a patron exclusive, by the way.
So you don't think it's a cult classic then? I know she missed that out there.
There is a really enjoyable Mitchell and Webb sketch in which a man has to come to terms with the last time he will ever watch Last Action Hero because he is now too old for it. And I think I've hit that point.
I do dimly remember that, yeah.
You can also win Tim Burton's Big Fish on 4K and Criterion's May titles on Blu-ray. So if any of those tickle your fancy, please go to avforums.com/competitions to enter. All competitions are open to everyone who is an eligible AVF member resident in the UK.
It's everyone except Phil, basically. We've covered this. So,
yeah, pretty much. Got a few previous winners as well by the looks of it. So Matthias 1989 won the podcast exclusive copy of The United Way on Blu-ray. Togusa won the patron exclusive copy of Fanny Lie Delivered on 4K. God damn you, Togusa, I wanted that one. I have to buy that myself now. Mouski9 won the 800 on Blu-ray. And please stay tuned to the end of the podcast so that you can win a copy of Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15. Well, if you want that, you can enter the competition for it.
Is it important if I haven't seen the previous 14?
I think you can jump in at any point with these. That
is not how Final Fantasy works.
I see.
I think they're all pretty nonsensical, so it doesn't really matter, does it? So.
Fair enough.
Right, so that's competitions. Well done to the winners there. Obviously, get in there and get some competitions won if you fancy the prizes. We'll be back in a sec with a huge hardware section, so stay tuned.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
Welcome, new patron, Ted Manassa. I hope I'm saying that right, Ted, but thank you very much. You're a new patron. Welcome on board. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for your support. And don't forget, if you want to be a patron, you've just seen everything flashed up on screen. Go do it. It's good. And you get your is it 10%, Stuart? I can never remember. 10% off merch. If not, you're getting 10% now anyway. So there you go. Go and get some merch. There's some decent stuff up there. Right, so we've got quite a bit to get through.
Just very quickly, Nigel Henry stuffed another $5 in the pot as well. Thanks, Nigel. Nigel asked for some advice via other channels, and he has very kindly donated to the ongoing podcast fund for that. So thank you, sir. As ever, appreciated.
Okay, I thought I'd missed something there when I was looking on the screen. I couldn't see it there, but yeah. Okay, excellent. Right, so are we going to do reviews first? Okay, let's do. We'll do the C1 first, the LG C1.
Yeah.
Basically, because I'm not going to tell you anything that I didn't tell you last week. The review will be coming up over the weekend. Just need to write it all up now. I've done all the testing, and like I say, I'm going to film it all tonight for the video stuff as well. So that should be popping up over the weekend and then into next week. But basically, it is a solid TV. Really solid TV. It it caused a few issues because in terms of brightness against the G1, there didn't seem to be a great deal of difference other than the full screen brightness, which went into in some detail last week. Now, I did get in touch with LG and asked them if they could put 4 questions to the engineers about the G1 and the C1 and what the differences were and so on. So Ed, would you like to read the questions out and then I can give the answers?
Certainly. Right. Let me get to the relevant part of the podcast. Sorry, you've caught me on the hop there. I was staring absentmindedly.
That was the intention.
Right. Question 1. What makes the G1 an EVO TV and not the C1?
So LG said, or the LG engineers have said, that the LG OLED EVO is a combination of a new panel and optimized processing, which is available exclusively in the G1 series. Moving to the C1, no matter what panel is used in the C1, each TV uses a processing to deliver a similar performance across the series. It's important to note that all OLED TVs of the same series, so either C1 or G1, are tuned to deliver the same qualities and picture characteristics, regardless of the parts that they may use. Question 2.
Is the panel and processor the same as the G1?
The G1 OLED display is designed to be used with a new panel and optimized processing within the Alpha 9 Gen 4 processor. The C1 is designed around a different panel, but it is capable of using panels from multiple LG display factories. The C1 uses the Alpha 9 Gen 4 processor, but it optimizes its signal to the panel differently to ensure consistent C1 performance across the line.
Right. Does the panel used by the C1 have the same compounds and materials that the G1 has for better color and brightness?
This is the one where they don't actually answer the question.
This is very a political answer.
The C1 OLED is tuned to make sure that every model in the series has the same optical characteristics to the human eye, no matter what parts are included in them. And I'm going to come back to this one in a sec. Question 4.
Right. If the panel and processor are the same, what are the actual differences that make the G1 an EVO?
Well, the Alpha 9 Gen 4 processors are the same. The optimization processes necessary to send the signal to the panels differ.
Right.
So what they're saying here is that the G1 has its own panel, which we already know about. It has the different compounds that LG Display claim that it has, which helps with brightness and colors. Where the C1, it gets its panel from a number of LG Display factories. So what they're saying here is that the G1 has its own panel and its own processing, and that's what makes it different from the C1. The C1 uses the panel and the processing slightly differently, and it can use different panels, but they're all made to look the same using the picture processing. So the C1 could theoretically use an OLED EVO panel, but it would never get the benefit of the compounds because the processing would never use them. It would be making the C1 look like a C1 without an OLED EVO panel. That's what they're saying in a roundabout way for question 3. That's basically, they're confirming the fact that the C1 could use the same panel as the G1, but it would never have the same performance because the processing is always going to make it look like a C1 and not a G1. So if anybody's out there, influencers or whatever out there claiming that C1s have the OLED EVO panel, so some C1s are better than others, this is coming direct from the LG engineers in Korea. That's not the case. Even if it had an OLED EVO panel in it, the Alpha 9 Gen 4 processor is processing it to look like a C1, and all C1s will look the same through the processing. And the G1 is basically the panel and different processing from the Alpha 9 Gen 4 to give it a little bit more brightness and color saturation. So hopefully that's clearer than some mud. Hopefully that makes some sense. and answers the questions that I know that have been on forums, not just on our forums, but forums all over, with people making some wild claims about
on the internet, making unsubstantiated claims. No,
I'm afraid so, Ed.
I'm sorry, I refuse to believe it. It's just...
which is why I went directly to LG. We have access to LG. We have access where we can ask the questions. Yes, you're going to get some political questions back, like question 3, where they wouldn't confirm the compounds and so on. But basically, what they're saying is a C1 will look like a C1 no matter what panel it uses due to the processing that the C1 uses, and the G1 will look different. But I'm going to get down to how different next week, because like I say, I've got a 55-inch C1 and a 55-inch G1 being delivered. They will both be calibrated. They'll both be sat next to each other. And I will test them within an inch of their life just to see what the differences actually are with them sitting next to each other, which is something that not a lot of people will get the opportunity to do. Certainly if you're looking to buy a TV, even on a show floor or a shop floor, you're never going to get the two of them together. So yeah, LG have been kind enough to send both 55-inch screens over. And I'm hoping that within the two and a bit weeks that I will have those TVs, that I'll also get hold of a Sony.
It's interesting, Phil. Daniel says, will be interesting to see your comparison, Phil, see if there's a tangible difference between the two. I'm assuming because LG are willing to send them, they believe that there is.
Yes, and they know that we're going to test them right as well.
No, absolutely. We've got the reputation, but nevertheless, they must be reasonably confident that under these calibrated conditions, the G1's going to do better. So
yes, and and of course with measuring and so on, we can tell if the panel's been jury rigged in any way. I do a factory reset anyway on every TV that comes in, because sometimes they come from other reviewers who leave their personal details logged into things. So I always do a factory reset
after signing them up for some serious OnlyFans action. So
it's one of the habits I've really got myself into now. But before I dismantle any TV, it's straight in and do a complete factory reset and make sure everything's wiped. BBC login, Netflix login, the lot. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much to LG for taking the time to answer the questions, because they were difficult questions, and I'm glad that they did send us replies and they make sense as well. Yes. So yeah, that's coming directly from LG. So hopefully that clears up some of what's going on discussion boards and forums and so on, where certain people have been making claims that just are not substantiated. Yeah, don't stack up at all. And look out for the C1 review coming over this weekend. I'm going to publish it over the weekend. I'd like to see some videos coming as well, settings videos. Let us know with the settings videos if you like the content in there and if there's anything else that you're looking for. I've tried to cover absolutely everything that you could possibly want out of the box. And when I say out of the box, like when you set the TV up, putting it into filmmaker mode and doing things for SDR, HDR, Dolby Vision. If there's anything else that you want me to look at, then let us know, and we'll try and implement that into the videos as well. So that wraps up TV. Let's move on to some earphones that we've got a bit of an advanced look at these, Ed.
Well, I did get an advanced look at these, and then I'm afraid that circumstances conspired. I couldn't actually get the review up in time for it to be announced, which I apologize to both Samsung and listeners, viewers, etc. But nevertheless, the IE900.
You mean Sennheiser?
Sennheiser, yes, sorry. This is the IE900 earphone. It is in some regards, it's a bit of an odd product, this, because it was announced almost concurrently with the news that Sennheiser has managed to sell their home division to another company, as they had announced their intention to do so a few months ago. So there's a bit of a weird sort of sensation getting these up and running. Should the first thing I play on them be Brian Eno's Ending and all the rest of it? But the long and the short of it is that first of all, before we just very quickly talk about the earphones, before we talk about the earphones, very quickly, the business of the takeover of Sennheiser's home division, it isn't a clean break in the thanks very much. We'll take the money. You enjoy this. There will be cooperation between Sennheiser and I think it's Sonovo is the name of the company that's purchased them over development for the foreseeable future. And it's not a clean, there's going to be interaction between the two organizations. Nevertheless, the IE900 is realistically the last product we'll see developed in the old way. And not only that, it's the most expensive earphone that Samsung has ever made. It is £1,099, which is a not inconsequential sum of money. So I suppose the good news is that it is a very, very good product. This is a further example of how Samsung, I keep saying Samsung, how Sennheiser keeps developing their in-earphones. They do not bother with armatures. They've never, to the best of my knowledge, made an earphone with armatures in. It has a single dynamic driver, one aside. It's 7.7 millimeters in size, which even by the standards of earphones is small. But the trick is the way that the housings are built, almost all of them are being used for air management. It's not dead space. So there are 3 Helmholtz resonators in front of the driver, which control airflow in the mid and upper frequencies. And then behind the driver is yet another chamber, this one filled, which controls bass management. So those little aluminium enclosures are almost entirely hollow, and they are shaped and they are formed to control the flow of air from the drivers. I won't go into the minutiae of how they sound. That's all going to be in the review. But suffice to say, when I was summing up, I was writing the conclusion earlier today. This is there are 2 other candidates for the best Sennheiser product I've ever tested. The original IE900 earphone, which I tested for AV Forums many years ago, and the PXC550 wireless headphone, which changed how I viewed wireless noise cancelling headphones and what they were capable of. This is up there with those. It is a sensational product. If it was a last hurrah from Sennheiser, it's an incredibly good one. But the nature of how much new technology is in them, these shaped chambers, the new driver, it bears no resemblance to any of the existing drivers used in Sennheiser earphones. It does suggest that there's a huge amount of trickle down and development technology to be had from these new flagships. And hopefully it means that there's scope to keep developing the technology and to see where it goes. I mean, I have to be honest, much as I love earphones, I make no secret about it, and wired earphones used with a decent device is a fantastic listening experience, a genuinely high-end listening experience at an almost affordable price. I would like to see what could be done in making these things work in a wireless context as well. That would be appealing to me. These do not work in a wireless context. So hopefully there's more to come from this development program, regardless of who owns it. But if you are shopping around for a truly world-class pair of earphones at an almost sensible price, you've got to have a look at these.
1,100 quid, Ed.
It's a lot of money for an earphone which can't be used wirelessly. And they are, there's no getting around it. It's a lot of money. I would say the other earphone we've tested at about this price was last year, the Campfire Audio Andromeda 2020. I've and ahed over whether this is better than an earphone that we gave the Editor's Choice Award to last year. There's definitely not a lot in it. And there are certain instances where I was listening to them, and there's a passage in the review, so I won't repeat it verbatim. There was a point where I was listening to them, and within about 40 seconds, neither the earphones nor the source mattered. I was back at the venue where that live recording was being done as a means of defying space and time. You can't say that £1,100 is that expensive. I mean, it's expensive for a pair of earphones, but as a means of doing that, you have to spend a lot more on speakers, either stereo or multi-channel, to achieve the same effect. So make of that what you will. I think they're absolutely fabulous, but I am not blind to their limitations. Sorry, if I'm looking distracted, it's because I'm being attacked by my own cat, who is being repeatedly thrown down onto the floor and repeatedly jump up again because he is a moron. So if I look distracted on the video, that's what's going on. So my apologies for that. But no, the review will be, I will get the review into the tank hopefully tomorrow. And obviously, we've got things like the LG to go up and stuff like that, but it will be available for Phil and the team to make use of as soon as they want. And if you have any feedback on it, just pop it in the comment section.
Yep, good stuff. Don't forget, if you have got questions tonight, get them in the chat window, and we'll try and answer them as quickly as we can. And if you are listening to us live, then thank you, or watching us live, thank you very much for coming along. It's great to see you. Please remember to hit the like button. I know it keeps getting said by any YouTube video you watch these days, but that's because it's important. If you hit the like button, it means that the algorithm will pick it up and serve it to people who maybe have never heard of AV Forums before, and we can find new people for our cult. So please remember to do that. And obviously, there's the Patreon as well, which we've gone through. If you want to become a patron, then please do. Please sign up. And yeah, lots of things to possibly come up there in the future in terms of exclusive content and so on. We're still working on that, but that will come eventually once we get things figured out. Right, let's move on to some news and discussion points, because there's lots going on.
Ridiculous
in the news. It's been a Andy's had no rest this week. He's had me constantly sending them through saying this is a priority, this is a priority. So lots of news hitting the site. It's been a busy news week. Let's cover the music side of it first, seeing as that's what we've been talking about. So 2 bits of news, one from Apple Music and one from Amazon, which are more or less the same in terms of when it comes to charging for lossless audio.
Yes, this is not an accident that these things happened at the same time. First of all, I suppose the more minor news was that Amazon has waived the additional fee for high res, which means that their service was always pretty good value, but is now by far and away the cheapest way of accessing high resolution audio content on a monthly subscription basis. And then with that, Apple suddenly remembered that they own Apple Music. And lurched into life. And from next month, you get high resolution audio and Dolby spatial audio. Now, the reason I banded these two things together, we can revisit these in due course. I'm not doing it just to confuse Stuart. Let's not beat around the bush here. This is responsive and at the same time proactive. It responds to Spotify's announcement earlier in the year that they will be offering a lossless tier. In that regard,
I'm guessing it's going to be free now.
Is responsive to that, but it is proactive because I don't really see how Spotify, which let's not forget is not owned by a company that has its own space program, what they do at this point. Essentially, they've been checkmated. They can't charge more. They have to continue burning through investor IPO capital, whilst two companies which have no such concerns can continue to. It doesn't matter whether the numbers are black, red, bright red, glowing, burning through the page. It makes no odds to them.
Yeah,
it is calculated. It is breathtakingly cynical, but this is not an area of state relevance and so on and so forth. There are no rules in this regard. So yes, the two are indisputably linked. Where it gets going back to what's going on now, to the individual cases for Amazon, this is an accountancy move. I think they just work on the principle that it's just easier to offer a flat price, and if people find the proposition appealing, they'll go for it. With Apple, as many people both on the forums and in comments and in articles all over the web have pointed out, their reactive move, and I don't care what the Apple fanboy is saying, it is reactive. It does leave them on the hop because, and I'm at pains to point out that I have mentioned this in a podcast before. I did say that Apple would have some limitations going for lossless and high res because a lot of their hardware is not automatically set up to support it. Now, the Apple fraternity has lurched into life saying that there will be a spate of announcements that reflect this, and there will be some changes to how certain devices operate that gets around this. and I've looked at a couple of them. Do we discuss leaks and theories?
Yeah,
Phil?
as long as
right,
the
okay,
listeners know that that's what we're talking about.
That is what there is obviously not a shred of corroboration for this, but the argument goes that the AirPods and other Apple hardware will switch from Apple's hybridized Bluetooth pattern connection to using Bluetooth to locate, and then a modified version of AirPlay to send high resolution audio. More than one site has been saying that. Now, that all sounds fine, and I need to be absolutely clear, it is completely and utterly technically possible. It's been technically possible for some years. The thing about Bluetooth versus Wi-Fi for transmission is that Bluetooth is an order of magnitude more efficient. So you'd be looking at a significant drop in battery life and efficiency if you switched over to powering your wireless devices via wireless rather than Bluetooth. So if they found a way around that, well, good luck to them. That would be one of the biggest technological breakthroughs of recent years. So we'll see where we go from there. As I said, I think this is more to close off any remaining options for Spotify to be profitable, and Apple will sort out their hardware niggles in due course.
I mean, it's cynical, but at the end of the day, capitalist society,
I would also
got the money, got the checkbook, and the one that splurged the cash, they will splurge the cash. And
I would also like to say, being more positive for a second, I've been doing this for long enough that I can probably dig out some of the articles of people writing, when Spotify and iTunes were absolutely, dominant within these spheres, that we were, people were saying, lossless audio is doomed because it all has to be compressed and the market only wants convenience. And now we're at a point where, high resolution audio is a de facto standard from the perspective of, if you just have some care about the audio quality, it's a big win, however breathtakingly cynical the circumstances it arrived in. So yes, it's not ideal. I would continue to say that if you do care both about quality, about royalties and so on and so forth, services like Qobuz still are the pick of the pack. They do things that are not necessarily going to appear anytime soon on Apple or Amazon. I would also say that this probably puts MQA in a fairly difficult position, because I cannot see either Amazon or Apple being willing to pay them a cent. So the arguments for a parallel high-res standard are probably beginning to look a bit thin at this point. So that's another consideration. But no, this fundamentally is not bad news. I do feel a little bit for Spotify, because essentially they made a play for what they need to do to continue to exist, and as of the end of this week, it just looks like I don't think it's got the guts to keep going. They've
been backed into a corner. It's going to be interesting to see how they come out. If they come out fighting, or like you say, if this is the beginning of the end, or they just become, the mass market low res.
I don't think that they can, as they can't charge less than these other services. I don't see how that. I mean, they still have some cards to play. I mean, they still have a superior learning algorithm, great interface, and other tricks that they've learnt over a long period of doing this. But I think that's right now, that's something that I'd sell. But then again, I've never been much of a fighter. Tom, out of interest, I mean, do you which lossless stream, which streaming service do you use?
Primarily Amazon at the moment, just because it's just what I fell into using, and it is by and large fine.
So do you use the high res version or just the compressed version?
Just the compressed version, because I only ever use it on a run or at work on my phone.
We see this. This is the argument I was going to make, Ed. You know, when I said, and Tom said it perfectly there. It's what he fell into and what he got used to. You know, and if you've been around for a while and you've been using these services for a while, you, unlike us, who can flit around and want high quality and all the rest of it.
I've got 4 subscriptions.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I've got 2 at the minute for music, and I've you know, barely used the one I actually pay for. So, yeah, it's one of these things that people are used to what they're used to, and for me, I use Spotify a lot. I use Spotify Connect a lot because I use it in the car with Apple CarPlay. I use it for, you know, different devices in the house. If I want something in the cinema room or whatever, it's easy to do, and it's there and it works. Now I know you can do that with other systems. I'm not saying that they're exclusive in that. It's just that's what I've got used to.
Yeah,
and moving to something else.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is pretty much what's dictating my use of it at the moment. Like if I were using it at home, I would be looking into it more in terms of the quality of sound that I was being provided with. But at the moment, because for me it's a out and about service, and when I'm at home, I either put a record on or put something else, then that's just the way I listen to music at the moment. But with all of these services, I think that the service that you buy into is usually dictated by what kind of user you are. And I used to be a paid up Spotify subscriber, but I stopped using it at home on a decent system, and therefore couldn't justify the subscription for it anymore. Whereas with Amazon, it's sort of a little bump up from my normal Prime subscription, not massively. It has most of the stuff I want to listen to in a way that is easy for me to get to it where I want it and when I want it. The only drawback that Amazon Music has when you compare it to Spotify is that it doesn't. It has just started hosting podcasts, but the podcasts that they've got are not the podcasts that I listen to. So,
what you mean, AV Forums podcast not there?
Do you know what? It might be actually, but AV Forums podcast is also on Stitcher, and that's the service that I use for my podcasts.
Right, okay.
I mean, it's interesting. What you were saying there. One other wrinkle to this, of course, in the niche, in the hi-fi sense, because I bring this up, if either Amazon or Apple are accepted by Room, which does have a significant influence across, the more hi-fi side of things, that will spell big problems for both Tidal and Qobuz. So that's a significant issue. So we'll see what happens there.
It's interesting, Apple Music with Dolby Atmos. Reading the press release, which is pretty vague, and they normally are. They're usually scant on detail, but the Dolby Atmos stuff, I think, is identical to what Tidal I've had for a couple of years now. So as an AV fan, if you've already subscribing to Tidal, which I am at the moment, and get Dolby Atmos through the Apple TV, which is what I use in the cinema room to listen to Dolby Atmos stuff. Is there a reason to go with Apple Music if it's just going to be the same? It's going to be interesting to see, because they mentioned spatial audio and Dolby Atmos.
Yeah, that's an unknown at the moment. The other thing I would say, Phil, if the pattern for being offered Apple Music is anything like being offered Apple TV, the service, there could just be a hell of a lot of people that transfer over, because if you buy an Apple piece of hardware full stop, you find yourself with a couple of months of it. Because they can afford to do that. So we'll see how we go. We'll see. That could also be a bit of a driver for this as well. Yeah.
So what does everybody who's listening or watching live at the minute, what do you think? Shove your comments.
Daniel says, any thoughts on Apple saying they'll pay 0.1% per stream to artists as a standard? It's comparable to what Spotify pays. It sounds about right. I mean, the thing, most artists are resigned to the fact that actual wealth is not generated by streaming services. It's about learning that you exist. It's about me using a streaming service to listen to your album to decide if I then want to spend 20 to 25 pounds on a vinyl copy or go and see you live once we're allowed to go and do that again. So much as royalties per play are important, the dynamic has changed. This is about how you leverage your exposure on the streaming service rather than what the streaming service is paying you. I don't endorse that position. I just accept it as a material reality of where we are in 2021.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the music side of it, but that's not all, because Amazon have got the checkbook out yet again.
I'm going to hand you over to Tom on this one. I'm going to do bedtime. I'll be back in just a second.
We'll catch you in a minute. So moving on to Amazon, they're in talks to buy MGM Studios for $9 billion. That's a lot of money, but they would be buying one of the biggest studio catalogs on the planet.
And if their 4K stuff, the 4K remastered MGM stuff comes in with that, then you are looking at some amazing films. So I think it's an interesting move.
Yeah, there's huge potential here because obviously Amazon Prime has lagged a little bit. I've got to say in the last 6 months it has improved. The films that have been coming up on Prime, some of the Amazon original stuff has been very watchable. Has been very good. So it could be a massive, and don't forget Bond as well. You know, Bond is a huge part of MGM's back catalogue. Like you say, some of the classics have gone. Wizard of Oz is in there, and that was recently redone Technicolor. Trying to think what the other big titles were back then. Ben-Hur.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, and that's just getting its remaster as well. And I think you touched upon Bond just then, and I think that's been the sticking point over the past 12 months, hasn't it? Because Apple looked at it as well, didn't they, last year? And they looked at it with a view to putting Bond on Apple TV, didn't they, basically? So this makes you think that probably Amazon's approach is going to be, you know, not the theatrical releases, but the back catalogue, which is still quite a lot of money, but
well, it's interesting because you know, there's other mergers going on at the minute. So AT&T, Discovery and Warner Media, they're going to merge. There is talk of Fox disappearing from Sky and going on to Disney Plus. So Disney are now consolidating a lot of their stuff onto Disney Plus, and they've also got Star, and they have huge subscribers, over 100 million now for Disney Plus. Whereas I think in the States, the HBO is it 65 million? I don't think it's quite as big as Disney Plus. So there's still quite a bit to go in terms of, I think, mergers and acquisitions. I think this is going to get really interesting over the next 6 to 12 months. I think we're going to see more of this as the big players try and grab as much as they can, basically, for their streaming services. Disney have openly said, you know, cinema releases are not where it's at. Where it's at is the streaming and Disney Plus. Yes, they will. You know, they've got huge franchises which will draw in cinema viewers and patrons, but at the same time, you know, the streaming service, that's where they see the big revenue. So that Amazon getting MGM and adding that to Prime, if it happens, because it's only in talks at the minute. But $9 billion, it's a lot of money. But everybody said $4 billion for Star Wars was a lot of money when Disney bought Lucasfilm. But I think Disney got the best end of the deal there. And even though they had a couple of flops like Solo and The Last Jedi didn't do particularly well, but even so, it's paid for itself over and above.
And they own yet another universe to tinker with as they see fit.
Yeah, and they are doing, and they've just got stuff lining up. But so the argument about like cinema to streaming is pertinent, Disney are, by the looks of it, going to head back to a more theatrical based model with the possibility of having stuff premium rental when things come out of the cinema, depending on the deals that are made with the cinema chains. The real thing that Disney are focusing on now are backing off from broadcast TV, basically, with this rumored closure of Fox in the UK, I should say, and with them taking the Disney channels off air as well. All they're interested now is their platform, and this AT&T Discovery merger as well. It's all about the same thing, because Discovery's platform is doing quite well, considering what it consists of, which is, Discovery and Animal Planet and history and what have you. It's got, I think, I may be making up a number here, but I seem to remember it's something in the region of like 25 million subscribers worldwide, which is nothing to turn your nose up at. No. And it seems like that Discovery streaming platform is what AT&T have got their eye on, and I think it's going to be the way of all content providers in the not too distant future, that everyone's going to start backing off broadcast TV and looking at this purely subscriber model based revenue system, for better or worse. But yeah, it's a really interesting one, this idea of shuttering TV channels in order to bolster streaming services.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if MGM go to Amazon, where does that, is there any independent studios anymore? Or Paramount, where do they come under now?
ABC.
They're ABC. Sony?
Good question. Sony's still Sony. So
Sony's still Sony. So Sony,
yeah, but they don't have their own streaming service. Well, beyond the PlayStation Store, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, so it's interesting that there's not much left to buy up, actually.
No, we're running out of stuff.
Yeah, and of course, production's the next big thing that they're going to have to get up and running again. It has been happening, but still, there's still going to be knock-on effects of having to close down for months on end. And
Martin
so on.
Gillespie asks, where will this leave Sky? Nowhere good, I think, is probably the
Sky
answer.
are basically trying everything they can at the minute. My deal ends with next month, 16th of June. And they're only going to charge me £10 extra. And I got everything at half price. They're only going to add on £10 extra because I think they are absolutely desperate to keep as many subscribers as they can at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, where Sky is sport. The future of Sky is Sky Sports, because they're losing their cinema. As soon as this deal with HBO is up, you can bet your bottom dollar that HBO Max will be releasing in the UK, and they will be pulling all their content from Sky. Yeah. It kind of just leaves Sky with sport, which is an interesting prospect.
Which again,
which Amazon
is also
could
busy, and also
is
also busy fragmenting itself or threatening to fragment itself at any given moment. So I mean, it's not an ideal position for them. Let's leave it at that. So yeah, it's not. The world is changing at a rate of knots, and people that we were 10, 15 years ago regarding as sort of all-conquering monopolists are all of a sudden looking very vulnerable and very exposed.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, obviously we're going to come back and discuss this months ahead as well, I'm sure, for the next year or so. But the problem has been the pandemic, and I mean that in the sense of it's proven that these business models work.
Yeah, it has accelerated something which would have probably taken a few more years.
I think so. I think we're going to get same day and date release on a more regular basis now. Yeah, premium rental and so on. And to be honest, if the titles coming are stuff like Black Widow and that kind of thing, I'm happy to pay 20 quid to sit and watch that in my cinema room.
It's interesting. I was weighing it up. I would probably, as regular listeners will know, I wasn't exactly a big cinema goer before the pandemic. I could probably still be persuaded to go to a cinema at the moment for Dune, and if I'd drunk enough, the Top Gun sequel. Everything else, even without the benefits of a home cinema, I'd sit out.
I think when you look at like tentpole releases, it makes a lot of sense for day and date, because it feels like they're probably not going to lose out. The crowd who want to go to the cinema to see those things are not going to go to the cinema.
Yeah.
And it will also open the market of people who maybe do just want to sit at home with their family, because people who are.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The moment that you're in a multiple person household, the value calculation becomes significantly different. I personally balk at a £20 day and date release if it's just me and the cat sat here watching it. But no, for a proper household, I completely agree. It's a totally different dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a cheap night out, cheap night in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, when it comes to going back to the cinema and so on, I'm glad you've gone back, Tom.
Yes,
I'm glad you've enjoyed.
Do you know what? I was delighted when your message popped up. We have a Skype group for non-critical conversation, shall we say? And you popped up in that. You were so, and you were like, can't wait. And I was genuinely delighted for you.
Yeah. I mean, I want to go back. I'm going to give it just a little while longer just to see how things play out, basically, and see how things go in terms of numbers and so on.
Well, also not having to walk to the metro centre will probably be quite helpful as well. Let's face it.
well, there is that, but I just want to give it a little bit longer just to see how things pan out and see how it works and so on. But I'm desperate to get back as well. I miss my afternoons out of the cinema. I mean, I've got a great cinema room and I've got some fantastic kit in there, and I continue to get stuff in for review that's amazing. But what I can't create is the space of going to see something on the big screen. You know, I might have a 10-foot screen at home, but nothing beats sitting in a large auditorium with a massive screen. Even if there's only a couple of you in there, it's just a different atmosphere.
I agree. I mean, as I say, the idea of watching Dune on anything other than the biggest bloody screen I can get to, it just is incongruous. So no, I agree. There are certain things where, and again, I dare say we're now speeding down a wholesale change to the cinema market, where you have it will be serious locations that keep going and art house locations keep going. It's the grey area in the middle of those things. Not state of the art, not kooky.
Well, I think
a spot of bother.
Yeah, but I think. I mean, I said before during the pandemic that I think that there is a huge opportunity for cinema to sort of reinvent itself in the next 12 months as like an event space, rather than just somewhere you go because you've got nothing better to do on a Saturday night, but somewhere you go for a thing. You know, the type of experience that you get in the Odeon, what do they call them, the Lux cinemas, or like you say, the smaller.
It's why IMAX does so well at the minute. It's because it offers something a little bit different, a little bit more exclusive, and that's how that works. And I think going back to when I first fell in love with the cinema, back to the days where it was a bit of an event. It was a bit of a presentation. You had the Dolby trailers or the THX trailers playing beforehand. The sound system turned up to 11 and making it an experience. And I think it got a bit monotonous. It kind of lost that appeal where you could go and watch whatever you want almost 24 hours a day in these multiplexes. And I think trying to get back to having something a little bit of an event cinema.
It's so weird, because this is a conversation actually for when we don't have a slow news week, but that conversation in microcosm is about how weirdly we've been affected about essentially we've returned to wanting things to be events and not just film. The whole construct of a cheeky Nando's sort of falls by the wayside. It's like, if I'm going out, I want to do something proper. If I'm buying something, I want it to be a significant object, and so on and so forth. We've, whether some of this falls by the wayside and it reverts back to type, I don't know. I'm not the social scientist required to pick this one apart. But there are some fascinating prospects to how across all manner of purchasing physical items, experiences, and all the rest of it that are going to take years to unpick.
Yeah,
as a result of this.
Some of the best social events I've been to have been in a cinema or in a theatre, whether it's been a live theatre play or whatever, or a premiere. I mean, the one that sticks in my mind, I saw Trainspotting premiere weekend in Edinburgh, packed screening, and it was laugh a minute, cry a minute, people standing up and shouting, and it was a fantastic experience. You don't get that in a home cinema. I love my home cinema. And
I mean, if you do, you've got a home invasion problem anyway. So.
Yeah, but that socializing with other people, social event, laughing at the same time, getting the jokes at the same time, it just adds to the experience. It adds.
Yeah, that means an inordinate amount to me. There's always pushback on the forums when you say this, but I actually quite like hanging out with other people to see a movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but it's the same with my determination to return to indoor pub settings. Pub gardens, especially when the weather's nice, it's lovely, but a relatively busy pub in winter. It's
with the log fire in the corner.
Yeah, and it's not a simple place to go because you want to alter your brain chemistry. There is a social dynamic to it, which is I have missed terribly, and so on and so forth. So yeah, we've got all this to discuss across lots and lots of different things.
There is a certain bravado on this podcast where we say we enjoy being on our own and we hate people and we hate public space. We don't really, and I think because we've had a year and a half of being locked away, some of us on our own, completely on our own, really pining for the social aspect of things. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into things. Now, just to wrap up quickly, Yamaha have announced a new line of AVRs. I think the big story here is that they've taken their time to release these three models, enough time that they've managed to sort out the HDMI 2.1 issues, which plagued the earlier models. That's the big thing to take out of that news. Go read Andy's news story if you want to get all the details of what the products are and so on, because we're running out of time here. But that is a big bit of news that the HDMI 2.1 bug is definitely not included with these.
Yes,
three
they really, and to be honest, it's been a long time since I've worked for them, but as a company, I can assure you, like a lot of Japanese companies, Yamaha would have found an inability to solve an issue to be mortifying, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they will have gone to the ends of the earth to ensure they don't have to do that again.
Most Japanese companies are absolutely like that. So yeah, that's good to see. So go read Andy's news story if you want more on that. We'll talk about these models in a little bit more detail in a few weeks, because I'm sure we're going to be getting.
Well, they've got a virtual press conference, which I'm sure that one of us will be paying attention to, and there's lots and lots of details.
Probably
there,
Andy.
So. Yeah, well, he's good like that.
He is the news guy.
He pays attention, so
so that's coming up. I think it was July, but it's actually June. I think.
Yes, it is. It's mid-June. And as I say, also for hi-fi people, there's some Yamaha stuff in the pipeline as well. So
okay, good stuff.
Stay tuned.
Right, so that's hardware done and dusted. Only 3 minutes late. We'll be back in a second with software.
If you enjoy the podcast on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, then please leave us a rating on your podcast app. We invite you to email questions and feedback to podcast@avforums.com and join in with this episode's discussion thread in the podcasts forum at AV Forums.
It's Ed's album of the week.
Oh my God, am I going to get a jingle? I'm in for a jingle.
There you go.
And it has just got to be.
Well, we'll see. Right, okay. I'll be brief. It wasn't a vintage week for music last week, unless Tom is going to vehemently disagree with me on this. I didn't see anything that particularly blew my frock up. I think that the album of the week is the Black Keys Delta Cream, spelt with a K, which is essentially an enjoyable romp through some Delta blues covers by the Black Keys. if you like the Black Keys, you'll like this album. If you like Delta Blues, which I do, you'll like this album. If you like both of them, you'll really like this album. It doesn't break any new ground at all. There are no new songs on it. They are all covers. Some are better known than others, but they are all covers. But I've enjoyed listening to it. It's a good, crunchy piece of Delta Blues music. And yeah, I can't say fairer than that. It's available on all the major streaming services, sometimes in high res. I dare say come next month, it'll be available in lots of high res versions. And there are, of course, CD and vinyl releases if that is your thing. I won't delay you any further than that. This is not going to be an album of the year at the end of the year. I did thoroughly enjoy
I enjoyed it.
I did too, but I don't feel that this has changed my perception of music as an entity. Well done, the Black Keys, for delivering a really quite pleasant blues album.
I've been going back in time again and going back to albums that meant something to me at some point in time, and I went back to 1998 this week, and an album called "Maybe You've Been Brainwashed Too."
Now, why
New Radicals?
Oh God!
Yeah,
New Radicals.
The New Radicals. I'd completely forgotten about them. Completely forgotten about them.
Well, didn't they explode under the weight of their own success?
I believe
yes, they did. It was a complete
one-hit wonder.
Yeah. Although the album is okay, and going back and listening to it again, it was actually quite an interesting re-listen, if you know what I mean. But yeah, You Get What You Give was the huge single of that album. But yeah, it's just one of those things, a trip down memory lane, which is what music's great at. You know, movies, yeah, to a certain extent, but I think music is
music because there's no visuals to go with it. It just brings you back to whatever you were doing, good or bad at the time. There are certain albums that I will never listen to again. But no, what was the one that I was, because I was horrified that it was...
I did the same with the Dandy Warhols at the weekend.
Which one?
So it was a best of, Ed.
Oh no, that's fine.
Yeah,
no. In terms of revisiting output,
because that's what you want from the Dandy Warhols.
Exactly. I mean, if I'm being contentious here, the greatest band for that is REM, because essentially REM have managed to create 40 magnificent tracks spread out over 500.
I feel like that's a little bit unfair. I've got a real soft spot for the whole of like New Adventures in Hi-Fi.
I don't mind that, and I would say that Automatic for the People on its own is a standout masterpiece. But then the rest, certainly for the first 12 years of their existence, they essentially churned out 2 good tracks an album and a lot of albums.
When you listen to their what's it called, their Dead Letter Office, their album of like really early stuff and demo, like boy oh boy, they started out pretty god awful.
They certainly had time to mature. Yeah. The other one that was horrifying for me is that I believe that left field's leftism is now 28 years old, and I just
that's where it gets funny.
Just horrendous in all sense of these things.
The other one I was going to mention was I didn't even know it existed, because I love Metallica's S&M, the original with the orchestra. S&M 2, I didn't even know that existed.
I didn't.
So I found that on a music streaming service this week, and I had to listen. Very, very similar to S&M 1, but a couple of new tracks. Is it Michael Kamen that did the original? Well, he was a composer, wasn't he, for the original version of that? So yeah, I found that, and I've been having a listen to that. And if anything, Metallica tracks are usually well mastered, well engineered.
Well, apart from the Black Album.
Unfortunately, it's probably one of the best albums, but it's not great.
Tom, did you see the email? There's public service broadcasting news next month as well.
No, that's exciting though.
Proper news.
What are they doing?
Well, there is supposed to be a new album.
Okay.
So I wait with bated breath for that, because those are always events.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the very few bands that actually have produced cool concept albums in the last 30 years. Because let's face it, concept albums are naff by concept. But and especially if you told me prior to it being released, I would have bought a concept album about the Welsh coal mining industry on the date of release. I would have only assumed that I'd suffered a horrible brain injury, but no, I was really rather taken with it. So
no, they are good guys. I was sort of anticipating the new St. Vincent album.
Now you see, this
it turns out it's quite underwhelming.
I wasn't. Because I absolutely love Mass Seduction, the one that came before it. No, I wasn't. She positively radiates talent, and it's technically brilliant. I just didn't enjoy listening to it.
Agreed. Yeah, that was pretty much my
so
my experience of it as well.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Pelman's just said, listen to Jagged Little Pill yesterday. I'd forgotten how angry she was. Alanis Morissette. I mean, the remaster of that.
Isn't that funny? Because I listened to that about 4 weeks ago, and I'd forgotten just how brilliant that album is. Yeah, it's cliched. It was a huge album. Everybody had it at the time and so on.
But just because something was played a lot, when you actually then revisit it a safe distance after.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like Moby's Play. I mean, it was literally played to death.
It was, but it's one of my favourite albums of all time.
If you revisit it now, masterpiece. Yeah, so.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to think, what was he on? Because he was on a real creative spark there, wasn't he, with that album, and then a couple after that.
Wasn't it
18 was amazing.
Yeah,
I loved 18.
18 I think. No, I feel the thing about obviously because both Play and 18 have got B-sides albums, because there were so many other tracks released with the singles. With 18 in particular, I just don't feel that the right tracks were released. Especially if you listen to the two albums in combination, there is a better album to be had from 18 and the B-sides, and to an extent you can actually use some of the Play B-sides to make a better Play. I did an article about this for AV Forum some years ago. But nevertheless, although all I would say is that driving through Berlin, I think I've mentioned in the past, I have a Russian client who is resident in Berlin, obviously, and driving through Berlin listening to Moby's Extreme Ways is just one of the magnificent things that you can do sober and legally. It just is just so right in so many different ways. So it is well overdue a vinyl release as well, because a copy of 18 on vinyl is astronomically expensive.
Are you saying that us singing Sunshine on Leith while driving through Vegas is not a highlight?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed that as well, not least because at one point an actual resident of Las Vegas looked over at two people singing Sunshine on Leith in Las Vegas randomly in January and looked. It's the look that you give people when they're panhandling for change. So no, I thoroughly enjoyed that as well, Phil. Music takes you to all sorts of different places.
Doesn't it? Right. I think it needs to take
we've done that.
Into movies now. But yeah, before we go, the deep dive, Ed, are we still doing this deep dive? The
deep dive project will happen. The problem is, quite unexpectedly, there has been a clutch of hardware that is worth reviewing for AV Forums, because I mean, from a lazy person's perspective, I'd like absolutely nothing better to kick back, listen to music, and then write about something that doesn't require me to have 40 boxes in the house. But unfortunately, we've had loads of really good stuff to review. The deep dive project will happen, I promise you. I will make progress on that, hopefully in the lull period over summer, especially now shows are being cancelled, which means that certain products are still not going to get released.
Okay, good stuff. Right, let's move on to film review time. Some slightly dodgy Hitchcock, paranoia, suspense, homage stuff.
Yeah.
Great band.
The slightly dodgy Hitchcock suspense experience is what I would call it. It's The Woman in the Window. It's a Netflix. No, it's not a Netflix film. It is a film that Netflix picked up, I should say, because it was originally theatre bound, but this was before the pandemic, and it is a casualty of the pandemic. That being said, it is not really a cinema film, if I'm being honest, and sort of plays a little bit like, a 1980s Saturday afternoon TV movie. It's what is interesting about this film is not the film, but the story behind the film. So it's based on a book by the same name by a writer called A.J. Finn, which is the pen name for a guy named Daniel Mallory, who at the time of writing the book was an executive editor at William Morrow and Company, which is a New York-based publishers. And the idea for the book came from The Girl on the Train, Gone Girl, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. There was a spate of these sort of thrillers with girl or woman in the title. And this guy, Daniel Mallory, thought he could get in on this and just hammer out a novel, which he has been sort of criticized for. And I'm not going to criticize him for that, because the ability to hammer out a novel of any kind is a skill that I do not have. So good on him for, you know, seeing a gap in the market and just hammering something out and getting something to press. However, in 2019, there was an article in the New Yorker which alleged that Mallory had fabricated huge parts of his life to get to where he was in the industry and to get this book published. So amongst the things stated in the article were that he had inflated his CV to further his career prospects, which, you know, I've never done that. Have you ever done that?
Well, are you suggesting that on occasions my CV goes long on some of my greater achievements and remove some of the more turgid episodes of my life? Yeah, well, I refute all of that, and so, I'll see you in court.
Exactly. You know, that's, you know, he embellished his CV in order to get a job at a publishing house. You know, he may also have faked an English accent for cred. He may also have claimed to have earned a doctorate from Oxford or two. He may also have claimed to have suffered and recovered from cancer and a brain tumor, have lost his mother to cancer, have lost his brother to cancer and or suicide. And he was also accused of borrowing very heavily from a 1995 thriller movie, ironically titled Copycat. So when this New Yorker article came out, Mallory basically released a statement that said something along the lines of, yeah, you got me. Like, he did not.
He did not. So he didn't contest it at all. He was when, yeah, it's a fair cop.
He didn't contest a word of it. What he did do was that he admitted that his mother and brother were still alive, but that there was no malicious intent behind any of it. So his reasoning for this great web of fabrication around attaining this position of authority and position of, I don't know, like pity publishing he was going for. I don't know what he was going for. But anyway, he claimed that it was all a result of him suffering from bipolar 2 disorder, which gave him mania, delusions, amnesia, inflated ego, manipulative or deceptive tendencies. This is interesting to me because I have bipolar type 2 disorder, and those are very specifically not symptoms of bipolar type 2 disorder. Like what Mallory is describing there, if those were the things he experienced, is full-blown mania, which makes it bipolar or bipolar 1. Bipolar is how it's like widely known. You have a clear-cut episode of mania, you are bipolar 1. And so having any of those issues that Mallory claimed to have, by definition, makes him not bipolar type 2. And all of this happened in the space of about 2 months. This huge reveal came out about Mallory. And in his defense, does misdiagnosis happen? Yes, absolutely, all the time. Could he be bipolar 1? Yes, absolutely. Is there an underlying psychological issue there of some kind? Almost certainly. But it was all coming out at the point where the film, The Woman in the Window, was in pre-production. So this caused a huge headache for the producers of this movie and for the screenwriter, Tracy Letts, who is a massively important writer. He's written Pulitzer Prize and Tony Award-winning plays. He's an important person in the writing world. It caused a huge headache for him and for the production company, meaning that they essentially had to change great swathes of this to avoid the legal difficulties that were surrounding Copycat and a couple of other books as well who had claimed plagiarism. And all this led to delays and reshoots and rewrites. And what we have is a movie that is sort of a little bit rubbish and something that absolutely doesn't even vaguely live up to the...
You know what? I find it very reassuring that after this monumental build-up, you've actually gone, yeah, it's a bit shit.
I want to see a film about him.
Actually, yeah, the biopic.
And that is, yeah, that's exactly what I put in the review. If there had been a film about the making of this film, I would watch that. Do you know what I mean? But this instead is just a really... It starts out as a sort of serviceable thriller, becomes slightly more interesting over the first 45-50 minutes, and then rapidly declines into abject stupidity. And yeah, it's so it's on Netflix at the moment. It's about Amy Adams, who's an agoraphobic, she's obsessed with Hitchcock movies, and she sees or thinks she sees something happening in the apartment across the road, and she starts to blend reality with her sort of obsession with Hitchcock movies. So there's got loads of the Hitchcock signature moves, like bold visuals, like Freudian iconography, like yet in Spellbound, abstract and surreal moments. And so on that level, it's quite fun to watch somebody do a Hitchcock mashup. But it's nice looking. And the space is used really well, and there's beautiful
Steve will buy it on disc then if that's the case.
The cast is phenomenal. Like, you've got Gary Oldman, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
All right.
Gosh, who else am I thinking of? It'll come back to me. It also has the two of the Captain Americas, Wyatt Russell and Anthony Mackie in bit parts. The cast is really, really good, and they all do an appalling job of selling the absolutely god-awful tripe that is the dialogue in them. And it was an experience watching it, because you look at it and you think, how have these people made this? This thing is stupid beyond comparison, and everyone involved in it is someone that you think, no, they should know better.
It doesn't even have the movie 43, proviso where none of the participants saw the final, the finished result or had any appreciation of what was going on. So you can sort of excuse their participation in a train wreck, because presumably, having not seen the film, obviously, I mean, it's not on my list of things to do. Presumably there would have been a set, and this would have happened in a meaningful sort of filmic way.
Yeah. There is no excuse for how awful it becomes in the final act. There is just no reason, no amount of rewrite, reshoot, restructure, anything. No, this is baked in, and it is terrible. So yeah, go and watch that.
Well,
right now,
if you got Netflix and you're bored, then it's always something you could fast forward through or play at 1.5 times speed.
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
Netflix were going to add that feature, weren't they? At one point, they were actually going to add 1.5.
They have.
Speed. They have added it, have they?
Yeah, but only I think it's just on the PC app. I've not seen it on the TV. But definitely when you're watching Netflix through a computer, you can set the speed to 1.5 or 1.25, or I think you could actually slow it down as well. I think you can set it to 0.75.
No, you don't. You don't want to slow it down. You want to get.
No, you don't want to slow it down. But I think that's one of the.
Right.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Anything on the TV that we need to watch?
I'm halfway. No, I'm not halfway through. I'm nearly finished watching the Nethers, which is the new Joss Whedon genre
before we
show.
dispense.
And you're reviewing this one for the site, yeah?
Yes, yeah, and the review will be out on Friday. It started this week, this Monday on Sky Atlantic, but all of the episodes have dropped on demand and on Now TV. If you want to go and watch it, it is. I thought I was going to really dislike it, and I don't really dislike it. There is enough in it to make it actually quite an entertaining. If you like Joss Whedon's style, then you will like it. But if you don't, you will find it intensely annoying.
So a solid 5 out of 10.
It kind of. I'm going to push for it. I think I haven't seen the end. We'll see how it plays out. At the moment, I'm in a 6.
Okay.
But considering I thought it was going to be like a 3 or a 4. I mean, quite pleased.
6 is above average. So.
It's fine. Yeah, absolutely. It is a fine show. It is about majority women who have been granted powers by an alien visitation that nobody remembers in Victorian England. I should say that. It's all very steampunk. And it's all very, very quirky and too many bad guys and lots of people speaking like they're on TV. And it's entertaining, but it's not good.
All right. Okay. For the review
in terms of, just very quickly, in terms of things I've watched, I'm most of the way through this new season of Love, Death and Robots. I don't, in terms of some of the technical attributes, many of these are superior to some of the first ones. I just enjoyed the more scattergun approach of the larger number of first season episodes. It's not to say that I haven't enjoyed these new ones, and some of them, I mean, the uncanny valley of how close to live action some of the CGI ones look now is but I don't know. Very if I think back to some of the ones from the first one that I thought, crikey Moses, and I said something different in reality, but we're on a podcast. And I went back and just instantly watched them again. That hasn't really happened in any of these, which is a shame. But I mean, I've still enjoyed watching them. So you know that's something, and they happen in a nice, short, and manageable way.
Okay, cool.
I've not got to them yet, but I found the first series to be more sort of misses than hits for me.
Now you see, I wouldn't disagree with that, but by having 18 of them, the hits.
Yeah, some of them were brilliant. Some of them were absolutely brilliant, but I've just not got around to watching this most recent season just because the ratio for me for the first lot.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And also, you watch more TV than me, whereas this is one of the rare things I actually watched the first time around and went,
yeah. I mean, if you watching something that isn't Air Crash Investigation,
well, no, I'm well aware of that.
Then
I mean, I would say if anyone, just I'm going to broadcast just the void in case someone is listening. If someone released the score, the complete score to the original Love, Death and Robots short, Lucky 13. I would pay you quite a lot of money for that.
There you go. Somebody out there's got it.
I directly messaged the bloke on Twitter. There was no response. I would pay for a lossless or high-res copy that I would pay genuine money. It is one of the most effective and beautiful scores to accompany anything in donkey's years, and I would have that in a heartbeat.
Okay.
But I digress. So no, otherwise I've like you, I've been plowing through Air Crash Investigation and Taskmaster, same as usual.
Yeah, God, they were lucky on this week's Air Crash.
I haven't seen it yet. No. I'll be watching it. I'm watching after this.
We can discuss it next week. They were lucky. Tom, I want to know more about Underground Railroad because I've heard it being discussed in various quarters. So, what is it? Is it any good? And are you doing a review?
It's a hard watch. It's a hard watch, and I was looking to maybe reviewing it, and I started watching it, and it is not something that I feel psychologically capable of sitting and binging.
All right, okay.
And I think that it's talking to Kaz about it. He had, I think, a similar experience with the other Amazon Prime original, Them, which deals with some of the same subject matter. So the Underground Railroad is like it's like a, I was going to say speculative fiction, but it's not. It's alternate history. That's the word I'm looking for. Based on the idea of the Underground Railroad, which, you know, during the Civil War, before and after, were ferrying. It was a way of moving freed slaves from the South to the North, basically. And in this TV show and the book that it's based on, it is literally an underground railroad, but it doesn't go half measures in terms of displaying the plight of the slaves in the South, basically, and it is very beautifully filmed. It's made by Barry Jenkins, who won the Oscar for Moonlight not so long ago. And it is absolutely stunning to watch, but the subject matter makes it a very difficult watch. And it's not really spoiling anything to say that in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the first episode, a young boy is clubbed nearly to death, and it doesn't really get any more lighthearted from there. So yes, it is good. No, I have not watched all of it, not by a long stretch.
82% user score. That's that's a big score.
It is. What I've seen so far is amazingly produced, and like I say, incredibly directed, and so I may look to reviewing it in the future if I get through it all, when I get through it all. But normally what I would do with a TV series is I would sit down over the course of either a day, 2 days, 3 days, and watch but 8-9 hours of this over a day or two, and I thought, that's not gonna do good things for me.
No. Okay.
So yeah, I would recommend it, but you have to be in the right frame of mind to watch it.
Okay, good stuff. Right. There's nothing I can add to this because I haven't been watching anything other than Air Crash Investigation. So it's been a tough week for TV. I've still got loads to watch as well, so I really need to be making a move of things. But I think that's about it for tonight, to be honest. I think we've done well. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions that we might have missed. Jason Stewart wants to be a TV reviewer. I think he just wants a free TV. Be honest, Jason. That's all you.
That's how we got into it. So yeah.
Will we be reviewing the Sony A80J as soon as the Sen we want? I will be reviewing that. Like I say, I haven't had anything from Sony just yet. I have been chasing them, so we'll see how we get on with that one as well. And I'm just quickly through. No, we've answered everything that's in the live chat. If you want to ask us a question and you're listening a little bit later in the week, then send us an email, podcast@aeforums.com, and we'll answer that next week. Just to remind you as well, if you want around at the beginning of the podcast, the Movies podcast is moving to the Wednesday slot at the beginning of every month. So that will be the 2nd of June is the first one in that slot. So they get a whole week to themselves. And the weekly podcast resumes the 2nd Wednesday of the month for the rest of the month. And we obviously do our end of the month at the end of the month. So that's little changes that have been made. We're not changing the day. Somebody did say, does that mean we're changing the day? No. It's just that the Movies podcast was kind of floating around, and it was ending up that you were having 2 podcasts in a week to watch or listen and so on. So we just thought we'd give the Movies podcast its own little week at the beginning of the month.
And of course, Stuart, who you don't see in these things, has to sit here and listen to us drone on. I mean, he presumably has to do it sober or near sober as well. So, so it made sense to reduce that as well. So.
Well, it doesn't reduce it for him because he's got the movie. He's got his stuff.
No, he doesn't have to do 2 in a week though.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. We're also recording a podcast tomorrow with Samsung, Craig Cunningham. If you are a regular on our videos and so on, you will know Craig. He'll be popping on to record the podcast tomorrow, and we'll put that one out. We don't have a date yet for it, but it will be this month. So keep an eye out for that. Talking about all the new Samsung TVs for this year. What the model lineups are, technologies, all that kind of thing. So if you're interested in that, we'll tell you a little bit more about it probably next week's podcast, because it'll probably go following that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But I think that's about it. So my thanks to Ed.
No, hang on, we haven't done the podcast exclusive competition.
Oh, I'm glad you're here because who's doing this then? Tom, you going to do it?
Well done. Goodness me. Okay. So to win a copy of Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15 on 4K,
it is quite a prize.
That's probably why I forgot about it, to be honest.
Do you know what? It's a lovely looking movie from a few years ago.
Okay. And Stuart's just put a photograph of himself up there, so thank you.
Okay. So the question, if you would like to win this film, is that Sony will shortly be releasing Final Fantasy Advent Children. No way! Final Fantasy Advent Children on 4K. I didn't know this until I'm learning about this now as I'm reading this question.
God,
they're releasing Advent Children on 4K. That is a day one buy for me. Let's get back to the question. Sony will be releasing Final Fantasy Advent Children on 4K. Which Final Fantasy movie will that leave not yet on the 4K format? So you can go to avforums.co.uk/competitions.
No, it's .com.
.com.
We are slick.
It's all right. It's all right. They know about it. They know how to find AV Forums. Just AV Forums /
Go to the normal
Chrome
place.
will help. Yeah.
Do the normal thing.
Yeah.
And you can win the thing.
Yeah.
Good
luck,
luck,
the thing,
guys.
win the thing. Congratulations. Right. Can I do the roundup now?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Ed Selley.
Don't go being a twat now.
Tom Davies.
Have you ever fired into the air and gone, ah?
It's like that. Hot fuzz, isn't it? If you enjoyed the podcast, then please leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. Plus, hit the notification bell to be informed every time we publish new video content. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news, and video. And of course, leave us a 5-star rating on whichever provider you use to listen to the podcast. If they allow you to do that, then leave us a 5-star rating. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.